interesting young companies you're seeing here, things that have you excited?
Yeah, I mean, so most of the companies I've been interacting with for a while, and I've tried to sort of, I try and meet with entrepreneurs and spend time, sort of offer my thoughts or maybe do some connections here and there, are sort of maybe sophomores, if you will, Grubhub, type of thing, CleverSafe, Braintree. So a lot of those organizations are the types that I've mostly been spending my time with. I don't know. I think CleverSafe is going to be a massive company here, and some of the things they're doing are super cool. I love what Brian's doing over and their team's doing over at CleverSafe or at Braintree. And so now I'm actually sort of getting back into more of the early stage, very early stage, still figuring out the models, still figuring out where they're going to go raise capital. I'm a fan of PV Power, which is a company I sit on the board of and invested in. Which is it's again targeting small businesses, which is kind of what I know in this network effect. And then I've outside of Chicago, I'm also an investor or a board member of a company called Gettable, which is sort of rental supply, making it easier for these small rental companies to be able to compete with the big guys.
Well, one of the things I'd share, we were talking about before, some of you may have heard it because I think my mic was on, but we were talking about companies we see. I'm on the investment committee of I2A, and one of the things that I think you see is people who are tapping into someone who's done this, particularly done, I think, what Andreessen calls the product market fit part of it, seem to be so much closer to the pin when they're doing this. And you have to iterate from there, but if you're in the wrong ballpark, to mix my metaphors, you got to iterate a long way to get there. And
I think back to that, taking feedback like that.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
is if there's an entrepreneur that won't take feedback, whether they agree with it or not, at least hear it. That just.
Well, I think it's two things you said. It's the feedback, and then the other one is, what will these people add? Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes there's a desire to well, this guy made a bunch of money, but maybe he made it in real estate, mm-hmm. and you should go ask him about real estate. Mm-hmm. Or they've been an investor in things, but people have walked that experience. And I think as our ecosystem gets bigger with people who've been successful as entrepreneurs, there's more assets for people to draw on. Mm-hmm. And it gets me really excited about where we're going, because there's now more people who've done it. It's not like 5 guys, yep. 5 women and men combined who can help you here.
Yep. And one of the things that I think someone gave me advice on early on, what I did is someone actually suggested to me to write down sort of the things that I thought the company would need to be good at to be successful, and then where can I go get advice or feedback or whatever in those particular things. And at OpenTable, we came up with 7 things that we needed to be good at. And so what we did is really built our advisory committee and sort of what we did around those things. And I can tell you, if you're an entrepreneur and you're going to meet with someone, have your questions ready. What do you need to know from them, rather than just sort of, hey, can we just go shoot the shit and chat? I mean, a lot of people that have done it before are busy, so figure out how to know the question that you're going to ask, or what you want to learn from them while you're there.
Well, that writing down one of the things you need is great advice, because there's a tendency for you to say, well, we have to do this, but if you don't bring an outside resource, we're doing this with semantic search right now. Mm-hmm. I don't know much about semantic search, and there's not a lot of people in Chicago who know that. We have an Austin office. I was down there. Turned out the guy who runs that business for us, his best friend was at MetaWeb. Mm-hmm. But you have to do that kind of outreach. I bought this guy dinner, and I probably got, for $200 worth of dinner, I got probably $10,000 worth of advice. So. Yeah. It does help, and unless you think that way, you're not going to necessarily expand your network in a way that you need to. Before we get to what you're doing next, one last question, which is Chicago. So you've been a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. You've been a part of this. You're an important part of this ecosystem here. What do you see where Chicago is today versus where it was a few years ago, and what do you see the advantages and disadvantages, or maybe types of companies for which there are advantages and disadvantages to start here in Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that if you look at Chicago, and I'm not a hard tech person, but certainly backbone technology and sort of smart grid and a lot of that kind of stuff. I mean, we're in the epicenter of, all of, a vast majority of the traffic sort of flows through Chicago. Anything from New York to San Francisco all sort of comes south along the rail lines. And so being in that epicenter, there's, Google's got a big data center here, Microsoft, there's a lot of sort of folks in that space that I think is an under sort of recognized part of the community here, for sure. And then certainly transportation. I mean, again, the infrastructure, we are in the center of the transportation U.S. here anyway, and where those broadband lines and everything are coming through right on the rail lines, right? So there's this massive sort of infrastructure stuff here that's I think there's a lot of opportunity to take advantage of. But
One of the things we talked about at I2A was if you're a social startup, there may be a benefit to being in the Valley ecosystem because there's so much social going on there. But if you're trying to transform an industry, there's a lot, industry is different out here. There are things that Mike and Matt talked about. Some things work in San Francisco won't work anyplace else. And so there certainly are some benefits there. What about, I read a thing or heard Fred Wilson say recently, he was on the board of FeedBurner. And he said he was back here a couple weeks ago. If you don't know Fred Wilson is one of the principal partners at Union Square Ventures and writes a blog called AVC, lvc.com. And it's a great blog, and he's really an interesting guy. But he said he was in Chicago recently, and he said how far Chicago's come in the last few years. He compared it. New York is now by far the #2 startup hub in the U.S., more than in a pretty dramatic way. And he said it reminds him of where New York was a few years ago. What you've lived through San Francisco and the bubble. When you go different places, what do you see as kind of where Chicago is and how that's evolving and where you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, I think the community here in Chicago is as vibrant as I've ever seen it. Certainly it helps with again the sort of you've got your light bank companies and a lot of those that have been here for a while, and then with obviously the success of Groupon and some of the early folks, but you're starting to see these sort of next wave of the sophomores I just talked about here, and you're starting to see more of the venture community doing deals here. I mean, all the ingredients are here. They just hadn't sort of been the ecosystem hadn't been built around the ingredients. You got great institutions from a business standpoint. You've got great technical institutions. You've got a lot of capital. You've got all types of customers here from corporate America. There's, I think there's more corporate headquarters here than almost any other city in America. They're starting to get more and more talent that's coming in here. Things like Code Academy, but also, I'm seeing CleverSafe do it. I'm seeing Braintree do it.
A friend of mine was the EIR at Greylock. Greylock's one of the great venture firms in the world, and they wanted him in the Valley and companies, and he came here to Trunk Club to be the COO.
Yeah.
Peter Barris, who's the head of NEA, was the first guy really here. He's on 5 boards, CleverSafe, and 4 of Brad Narick's companies. And he had an apartment here, and he was the one major coastal VC who came. And now you've got Bill out here. You've got Excel with Braintree. You've got
Lightspeed.
And then we have Andreessen Horowitz just came into Belly. So you're really seeing it. It's exciting. It's great validation. They used to say back in the Valley days or in the boom days that venture capitalists won't go to a place where they can't drive to the board meeting. Apparently they have NetJets now, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can remember 3 years ago telling Bill about an idea. Actually, it's probably like 4 years ago telling Bill an idea about Grubhub, and at first, and he's like, well, are they going to move to the coast? I said, no, probably not. So now he came out here and invested in them. So
that's great. So you've got an exciting new thing going on called Impact Engine, and I wanted to take a few minutes here at the end. I think people will be excited about this. Talk about what it is, how you got involved. I mean, this is a really different thing that builds on a lot of the principles, though, that we've been talking about all night.
Yeah, so Impact Engine is a venture accelerator focused on for-profit businesses that also address social or environmental issues. So with the birth of I'll keep it short, but the birth of my sort of first child, my oldest daughter, Kendall, I started to wonder what the world might be like when she got older, and started to get pretty concerned about some of the challenges that we have out there and whatnot. And so, but I was sort of disenchanted with a lot of the nonprofit world out there and sort of how they were going about. I thought it was a flawed business model, if you will. And so what Impact Engine is it's really about how do you help for-profit businesses think about solving these social and environmental challenges that we have, where I think there's massive opportunity as businesses will start to think about things in different ways. And so we have applications open now. We're trying to find 10 teams 10 entrepreneurs that are sort of early enough that we can help move.
Can you give people a good example of because I think sometimes people don't understand this space so well. What would be an example of a company that you wish they'd gone through here if they weren't already out there, or a way to make it hypothetical?
So there's a toilet company, right? So obviously sanitation issues in large parts of the world are a big health issue. It slows down the GDP. It causes all kinds of issues. And so there's a toilet company, and the name's slipped my mind right now, but they actually now have redesigned the toilet to where now they can pull the waste or the byproduct out of it, use that for energy, and then they can also then use it for fertilizer as well. So now they create local energy local energy utilities in these small places that could never get light and that kind of stuff. And so now you have less people sick, you have more people getting educated, you have less sort of conflict, you get more stability in a region, and they can sell those for profit.
You know, it's interesting. A friend of mine is a partner at Highland Capital, one of the great firms, and he went to Rwanda, and he's invested a lot of money in Rwanda, but it's all for profit. He doesn't plan on taking any out of the country, but there's a president in Rwanda who's apparently very progressive and innovative, and he said, so they're doing all these companies, but he thinks if they're not for-profit business models, they don't become self-sustaining.
Correct.
And so he's changing the country. He's investing a lot of money. He's not going to take any out, but he said you have to make them for-profit enterprises. Outside of certain things like maybe a hospital.
Yeah. And I think there's massive opportunities out there, and not just in the third world, but here in the United States as well, around education, different water solutions, different energy solutions. There are big opportunities here.
That's great. And where is this going to be?
Yeah, so we're announcing that we're going to be hosting here at 1871, so we're excited about that. Take advantage of the ecosystem here.
This is news. This is literally, you're the first to hear it.
So we're excited. So it's a 12-week course. There'll be mentoring. There's a user-centered design sort of crash course that we'll bring people through. We give a $20,000 sort of stipend to help buy top ramen while you're in the class. Then there's also going to be a number of we have a couple different partners, but Leo Burnett is an example, and we're really going to try and figure out how do we partner these companies with potential customers that are out there as well, so we can do more and more customer identity and working with them. And then ultimately, like most accelerators, there's a investor day at the end, which will be on December 5th.
And the deadline to apply is?
The deadline to apply is June 30th. And so we encourage sort of companies to go check out the website. It's theimpactengine.com. Or sorry, yeah, theimpactengine.com. Getting used to it, sorry. And Adam's company was actually Impact Venture Partners, so I throw it in my mind. But anyway, so we're excited.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you, Chuck. This has really been fantastic.